For Latinos, the American dream is within reach, but real and tough barriers continue to prevent us from reaching our full potential. The time has come to start talking about solutions. Join the conversation at Soluciones con Libre. The Libre initiative, a group committed to empowering the Latino community, invites leading experts and community leaders to dialogue about the most pressing issues facing our country. From healthcare, education, to jobs, the economy, and immigration, our community is looking for answers. Together at Soluciones con Libre. For more information, go to solucionesconlibre.com.
There you go. Yeah. So welcome to Soluciones con Libre. This is a campaign that we have right now going across the country. And the goal is for us to come together and have real conversations about policies that affect our everyday lives. And I want to thank every one of you for coming here. We have folks from Florida. We have folks from New Mexico. We have folks from Las Vegas. And then online, we have about another 600 or so people who are joining us live and watch parties all across the country. So my name is David Velasquez. I'm the executive director of the Libre Initiative. And we're proud to put this event on for you guys. We have a really great night planned, some really good conversations at your tables. We want to hear your opinion. We want to understand if you understand the solutions that we're talking about and how we can better the situation on immigration. So Soluciones is a national campaign, like I talked about. The Libre Initiative is an organization that really wants to focus on elevating our voices, Hispanic voices, across the country so that we can change policy and make sure that the lives of all people are bettered. So with that, I want to introduce you tonight to Daniel Garza, who's the president and founder of the Libre Initiative. They're going to come up. We're going to talk for a little bit. Then we're going to break out into breakout sessions. It's going to be a great night. Can't wait to hear from you guys. Thank you for being here.
All right, thanks, gang. I appreciate that welcome. Glad to have you in McAllen, Texas, my hometown. I said this morning that it always seems like I go to where you're at, but today you're coming to where I'm at, and that's kind of nice that I actually drove to work instead of flying to work and Ubering to the event. So America has shown that amazing, incredible things can happen when you have a welcoming immigration system. And yeah, as spotty as it has been, honestly, because it's not a perfect system, we have benefited from immigration tremendously. In our 250 years almost, we are looking at over 200 immigrants that have come to America, because it was in America where they could achieve what they could not in their country of origin, because America was the land of opportunity. America was free. Where people were free to commerce, free to trade, free to express themselves, free to take control of their own destinies. And immigrants, of course, benefited from that. But here's the thing, America has benefited from immigration. Americans have also benefited from immigration, because there is this thing called spontaneous order that we like to talk about in libertarian circles. And spontaneous order is, the people find a way, immigrants have found a way to meet demand of products and services. You don't have to tell immigrants where the need is. They sniff it out. They inform each other. There are people, just to give an example, in Garza Gonzalez, where I'm from, who know when the apple season is in the Yakima Valley harvest system. They know when there are jobs for construction in the DC, Northern Virginia area. They know the market in Miami or in North Dakota, in other sectors. It's incredible, right? Because that has been the way that I think America has benefited so much. Right now, there are 10 million jobs that are to be filled in America. I think it's a better system when we can have a flow of immigrants that could take those And they don't have to live in the shadows like they do now. In 1986, under Reagan, we passed IRCA, the Immigration Reform Control Act. And it absorbed 3 million immigrants who at the time were undocumented in America. But it didn't anticipate or didn't provide for future flows of immigrants. And this is why we're at the place we're at now. There is a lot of demand for labor in America, whether it's low skilled and whether it's high skilled. Immigrants can help fill those voids. And let me quickly, entre parentheses, tell you a little bit about my family. Adán y Modesta Garza, who were from Garza González, Nuevo León, Mexico, saw America as the promised land. There's a, I'm gonna have to be quick here. There's a stanza in a song by Woody Guthrie about the Joad family from the book that John Steinbeck wrote called The Grapes of Wrath. And in it, it says, they came up to the promised land. It says, and it was a rich green valley with a river running through it. There was work for every single hand, they thought. There was work for every single hand. And that's what America is. It's the land of opportunity where people come to work. People come to contribute. People can in a very real way, deliver on that promise where people can find fulfillment in that pursuit of happiness because they're chasing their own dream. They're not chasing the dream of a dictator, the aspirations of a politician, but their own dream. And in chasing that dream and seizing it here in America, they make wealth for themselves. They make life better for themselves. And that's been a common story for these 250 years. But in doing so, they make America stronger. They make them, and they've made America stronger. And so we want to honor that legacy, and we want to have a conversation about that. Because right now, the extremes on both sides have taken over the conversation. And we need to wrestle it back. We need to reclaim that conversation and talk about responsible, sensible, bipartisan solutions to the immigration issue. Because there's too many lives at stake, and the future of America is in the balance on this very issue. And sure, there are other issues that matter, but right now let's focus on this issue. But first, I think they have a video from Senator Cornyn's office and give us a little bit of insight into this before we get into a conversation. And I'm gonna have Jorge Lima come up.
Hi, I'm Texas Senator John Cornyn. I want to take a moment to recognize my friends at Libre for your support of my Bipartisan Border Solutions Act. Thanks to Daniel Garza and his team, we've been able to add Republican and Democratic co-sponsors in both the Senate and the House. I look forward to continuing to work together with you on issues of importance to Libre, starting with how to improve our response to the migrant crisis at our border. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you there in person, but my counsel, Donald Stevens, is prepared to give you an update on our recent progress on the bill. So thanks again for your friendship and efforts on this important issue, and keep up the great work.
We're really grateful to Senator John Cornyn for being a friend of Libre all these years. We have a strong, productive working relationship with him in his office. And regrettably, even Don Stevens is not going to be able to join us. We couldn't make it work. So apologies about that. But believe me, we have a great substitute for that. Our Director of Policy on this very issue, Jorge Lima. He's, where is he at? Jorge, where are you at? Vente, Jorge. Jorge is our go-to guy when it comes to policy on the issue of immigration. He is one of my favorite people in Washington. I try to stay away from DC. No. He's one of my favorite people, period. Okay, I take it back. Apologies if it came across that way. But Jorge, you and I have been working together now, how many years? Almost a decade, yeah, because you were one of the early hire-ons at Libre in Northern Virginia, and you brought immense value to our efforts, and you continue to do so. And I thank you for that, and I thank you for your friendship.
Well, I mean, when you join an organization like Libre, it only brings out the best in you, right? So thank you for starting something like Libre, making all of this possible for the past decade, and the impact that Libre has made to our Hispanic communities all across the country.
My man. Thank you, sir. You know a little bit of my personal story, right? I was born in California during the grape season. My parents were farm workers, worked the apples, pears, peaches in the Yakima Valley, sugar beets in the panhandle of Nebraska and Scottsbluff and Alliance, and then back to Mexico, right, for 3 or 4 years, which is why I'm so familiar with this border area, right? I was in and out my entire life. Right now, there are 2 million farm workers across America. It is estimated that 90% of them are undocumented. This is not a good situation for a lot of reasons, but there's legislation right now that could help us address this almost immediately. Can we talk a little bit about the details of that legislation?
Yeah, happy to. I mean, I think you framed it up the right way. Many people think that immigration has to be either one really massive bill or a bill that's only targeted to the immigrants themselves. But the truth is there's so much more to the issue of immigration, and there's a number of bills out there that are addressing different parts of that entire situation. And one of them is a bill designed to address some of the issues at the agricultural sector. And when you look at that, what I appreciate about the Farm Worker Modernization Act, which is the name of the bill that has passed with a bipartisan vote in the House of Representatives and has good conversations going on over on the Senate side. But when you look at that bill, what's interesting is that you could tell there was an intent to bring both sides together. And there was genuine negotiations that took place to address not just the labor situation, and I'm talking about the labor that's here today, but they also talked about the labor needs of tomorrow. So it wasn't just about the immigrants that are here, though that situation was certainly addressed in the bill, but it also talks about the farmer's perspective. What does it take to run the agricultural industry, and what are the labor demands that are going to be part of our future, and how are we going to be able to step up as a country to meet those demands? And then all of that tied right back to everyday Americans, right? If you are worried about prices going up, supply chain issues, and just not being able to find the things that you need for your kitchen table because they're not at the supermarket, that ties back to the agricultural sector. And it ties back to the labor situation, and it ties back to the ability for farmers to meet the demands of a growing country.
And I love that you went from the immigrant who gets to benefit from this legislation, as my parents benefited from coming to America, and so many before them and after them, right? Then you also then shifted it over to how the farm owner and the orchard owner also get to benefit from this, but then also the consumer, right? And so I guess that's where I want to focus in. How is America strengthened by this kind of bill?
I mean, how is it not, right? We are a growing country, and we are all here because we want to see that country continue to grow and continue to prosper. In order to do that, we need to eat. We need to make sure that food is on the table. We need to make sure that folks can go out there and continue to contribute and be part of a prosperous society. You don't do that without a functioning agricultural sector. You don't do that if the fruit is left on the vine and isn't actually making it out of the farm. You don't do that if it can't be put into the trucks that then have to drive the country to get it to your supermarket, right? Like, those are all things that are tied to things like agriculture. And to be honest, just to step back for a second, this is why I love working on immigration. I'll be honest with you, right? In my story, I never thought I was going to be working on immigration. I love it. It's my passion now, but it was not where I started. I started as a land use attorney in Miami more than, ashamed to say, almost 2 decades ago. But what I love about the issue of immigration is I get to defy a lot of myth that people have about the issue out there, because they expect me to be only about the immigrant part of immigration. And don't get me wrong, I love that part. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for immigration. My parents immigrated to this country and gave me the opportunity to grow up in America and be free and do and pursue my dreams here. And America gave us the opportunity to do that. So I love that part. But it doesn't end there, right? You can then talk about the impact that has on an economy, that has the impact it has on consumers. And there's an immigration story anywhere that you go, whether it's a friend's house or a stadium or a supermarket or a restaurant. I mean, that's what I love about immigration. It is intertwined really with who we are, and there's a story at every point. And so when we talk about ag or some of the other components we're going to talk about, yes, there's the immigrant part, because there's a lot of barriers facing the immigrant. And if we remove those barriers, it's actually about the mutual benefit, the collaboration that happens between the immigrant, who now has more opportunity to contribute, and the American citizen, consumer, colleague, neighbor, who now gets to cooperate and collaborate with that immigrant and create the magic that I know many of us experience every day in America.
Hermano, if I had a dime for every mom who told me, I can't wait for my son to grow up to go work in the fields, it's going to be awesome. Actually, I'm kidding. You never hear that. You know, and that's what I mean about my parents, you know, who came in as farm workers. They moved on and up. My aunts and uncles moved on and up. And look, let me say entre parentheses, farm work is a noble work. I deeply honor and respect those who work that hard labor in the fields, in the rain, in the sun, because I did it. I know how hard it is. But people want more than that in America, and they're going to get more, because we're the land of opportunity. We move on and up, and my cousins moved on and up. Who's going to replace those 2 million who are going to move on and up? This bill, I think, would service America very well, I think, in that respect. Let's talk about dreamers. Let's shift a little bit.
Okay.
What's happened with the legislation and the proposals? It seems like it was the most popular component of immigration. Where are we at right now? I know there's a pending court case as well that could maybe shift things one way or the other. What do you know about the landscape?
Yeah. Let's talk about what's happening with dreamers. Nothing. Nothing, right? Everyone, it is the topic, and I'm talking specifically about Congress at this moment. Anybody, show of hands, anybody know when the first DREAM Act was introduced in Congress? See a couple hands. Almost. I heard someone say 11 years ago. The bill specifically, the DREAM Act, the first introduction of the DREAM Act was 2001.
Santo Dios.
That bill can legally drink in this country. It is 21 years old. That's how long we've been talking specifically about removing the uncertainty for dreamers. And Congress has not figured it out yet. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. There is a lot of different types of incentives as to why that hasn't happened, but we're here to change that. And I think, Daniel, to your question, what's sad about that truth, that nothing has happened in Congress, is that means that dreamers have grown up in this country under uncertainty, not knowing if they are going to have some legal status, if they can work, if they can go to school, what state do they have to go in? Should they buy a house? Should I buy a car? What is Judge so-and-so going to say? Does that court case now take everything away from me? That is their life, right? With all the different difficult situations and questions that life brings at you, imagine just literally not knowing if the status you have is going to be taken away or not. And that's the sad truth, that even with DACA, it is a temporary fix. It's a Band-Aid that can be taken off, can be lost at any moment. And that's a disgrace to these individuals who have grown up in America and have largely contributed in enormous ways to our communities. And to be a little bit more specific, there is, and kind of deep dive really quickly, I promise I won't stay down in this rabbit hole too long. The question of whether or not DACA is constitutional is still an open question. And there are lawsuits out there to question whether DACA is a constitutional program. Many of you will remember the program DAPA, where P was for parents, and in DACA, the C is for children. The DAPA program was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, and so you don't have that program today. But there are court cases now driving that same question to DACA. And yes, DACA has gone to the Supreme Court for other reasons. Happy to dive into that later if you guys want to talk about it at our tables. But on the question of constitutionality, it is here in Texas, a court case ruled it unconstitutional. And when it was ruled unconstitutional, the judge also implemented a stay, meaning that decision has not yet been implemented. But that stay can be lifted at any point. And when it does, it is everyone expects, and many groups are preparing to then file the lawsuit at the Supreme Court. So everyone anticipates that this will likely go to the Supreme Court again, and that Dreamers will continue to live in this uncertainty, not knowing what the Supreme Court will say. And we're looking at a timeline of probably sometime by next summer. And so do we wait? Do we have to wait for this to again go to the Supreme Court when Congress can finally maybe pick up a bill they've had for 21 years, fix it, and then go have a drink?
Yeah, and I think what makes it even a higher potential that it could be deemed unconstitutional is that the makeup of the court right now is a very constitutionalist court, in the sense that it does take original intent to another level. And in this case, the reason DAPA was found unconstitutional, and you can correct me on this, Jorge, because it was one thing for the executive, and keep in mind that it's the legislative that makes law, not the executive. And in this case, they had overreached in the sense that they said, well, it wasn't only look the other way because of the transgression of the actor, but it was, oh, states, by the way, confer to them benefits. That was overstepping, they said, with DAPA. And it could happen also with DACA. So the urgency is real in the sense that we can remove that blurriness, that haziness, if Congress acts, because of course, they're the ones who are responsible to do that, and it can give us permanence.
It's of course, right? And that's what we keep pushing on Congress. Yes, the administration has certain ability to make these decisions, right? The law allows the administrative branch of our government to do a lot in immigration. But there are limits to that, and that's why DACA and DAPA danced around that limitation. And many people suspect that DACA will go the same way as DAPA. But we're here because Congress has not done its job. Congress has to pass laws that define what it is that's going to happen on our immigration system. And, we talk about Dreamers and the first DREAM Act being 21 years ago, but really real significant reform on immigration has been more than 30 years, 3 decades. I mean, how much has the country changed in the last 30 years? And how do we have an immigration system that has not kept up with where we are today?
Well, one more question on Dreamers is, you're right, it's been a lot of time from the time that Dreamers was proposed, and even since the executive order was put into place under DACA. They've grown up, and there's been kids who have grown up behind them who are not Dreamers, but now they're in the same situation that originally Dreamers were in. How do we incorporate those kids who, through no fault of their own, through no decision of their own, are here in America and operating as Americans?
Well, I mean, that's why Congress needs to do, because it's not just one thing. When Congress doesn't act on these issues, it's not just one population that gets impacted. And the more you ignore it, that impact, that ripple effect grows wider and wider. And so you're right, many Dreamers who did come as children have been waiting more than 21 years for a solution. Now they have children, they have families. So many of their children are actually American citizens, having been born in this country, but they're living in family and households where the parents don't have a permanent status. And of course, there's Dreamers that have come before, but there's also another population called legal Dreamers, right? These are Dreamers of legal immigrants. So immigrants that come typically can bring their families. So if you're coming on like work visas, you can bring your families, and you're doing everything under the law. But if your child then becomes 21, they now don't have an option. And so that's another population that we're trying to figure out. How do you create a system that allows for those children that also were raised here and can contribute here? Is there something available to them? Because most often there just isn't. And again, these are not people trying to avoid the law. It's that the law has not kept up to understand those situations and provide them with an option. It just isn't there.
So Jorge, let's move to the Bipartisan Border Solutions Act, which you heard Senator John Cornyn talk about, and we've been very involved in promoting this legislation because we feel it strikes, I think, right at the solutions, right? This is what this forum is all about, right? Talking about solutions. These are real solutions. Let me ask the Texas team. Let's give the Texas team a round of applause for the work they did to put all that together. Jorge and Kennedy and Renee and Johnny, you guys did spectacular work here in McAllen. Thank you so much for that hard work. We all our entire team and most of the folks in this room, we were out in the border areas, we were up against right to the wall and the river, learning a little bit on the ground as to what are the realities that are happening on the border, the dynamics of the border, commerce, trade, people's lives, how we use water, but still reconcile it with the fact that we need to have accommodating, flexible borders that allows for all that, yet we keep, the bad element out. The Border Solutions Act would help in that. Can you give us a snapshot of what the Border Solutions Act is about?
I mean, I'm a big fan of the Bipartisan Border Solutions Act. And it starts, again, with genuine leadership that is trying to find common ground and drive a solution. And so when I heard that Senator Cornyn was working with Senator Sinema, it was just such a nice, fresh breath of fresh air, because suddenly you were starting to see again what we've believed for so long, that there is a lot of common ground that can bring both the right and the left together on these important issues. This isn't a false choice where you can either want to address the border or want to address immigrants, but you can't do either. The truth is you can, and the majority of Americans want us to do all of this. They want to be both secure and be welcoming to immigrants. That is what America is. And so this bill in particular, what I love is, and especially for those who joined us today, you understand that the border isn't just something that can be automatically secured. Let's just check the box and make it secure. Let's just do one thing and make it all work. It requires conversations with the law enforcement experts, which we met with today, who are there trying to enforce the law and keep America safe. What is it that they need? And they tell you, yeah, there are parts of the border where a physical structure would help. And they pointed that out. There's also terrain where that physical structure is impossible and would literally hurt if we were to put it in. But it's so much more than that. There are places where we don't have infrastructure. They literally do not have a road to drive to the border. There are areas where we can install more emerging technology to help them actually have situational control of the border, but it's not there yet. And what I love is that the Bipartisan Border Solutions Act looked at the problem and said, you know what? There's more that needs to be done here. It talks about infrastructure and the need to create regional processing centers and create the type of infrastructure and investments that are needed by our CBP agents along the border. It talks about process, right? Because no physical structure can automatically stop the flow of immigrants. It can help maybe slow them down or create better, points of entry for them, but it's not going to automatically stop the immigrants. So we also have to talk about the process. What happens when an immigrant does show up at our borders, and how are we processing that? This bill helps enhance that processing and understand, what do we need? Do we need more immigration judges? Yes. Do we need more asylum officers? Yes. Do we need to improve the process and the timing of how we can process folks who are here doing a very legal process, which is to seek asylum? But we have to make sure we have a system that doesn't then automatically put them in a court case that takes, right now, nearly 4.5 years to get an answer. This bill helps provide a faster process, helps even think of beyond, so that it understands and can anticipate surges at the border and implement different pieces that change the processing at that moment. It also talks about personnel. We can have data and technology, but you do need people at the border. And so it helps create more investments to help get CBP the personnel that it needs at the border. So you start talking about the problem in terms of personnel, in terms of process, in terms of infrastructure. You have a very dynamic solution. And that's what we found so fascinating about the BBSA. It's probably why we got both Republicans and senators to come together. And unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties. Otherwise, we would have someone from Cornyn's staff here talking to us.
We got you, brother.
But we did talk to his staff and our friends in that office. And I'm proud to be the first one to report that because of the work that Libre and AFP have done around the BBSA, we're getting more attention. And we now have Senator Tillis of North Carolina and Senator Hassan have both agreed to co-sponsor that bill, because of the direct work that all of you have been doing.
That's a tip of the hat to you guys. You guys are doing incredible work, and that's why we need you guys to armar la comunidad, right? You heard me say this earlier today. El que tiene pueblo tiene poder. I mean it. When the community comes together, now we are petitioning to our elected leaders. What are our priorities? Of course, they have their partisan agenda, but they need to hear directly from us. Jocelyn Castillo, who is back here. Jocelyn, if you can wave your hand. Yeah, there she is. She's doing amazing work on the Hill with Marilinda Garcia and our team. This is the team that really counts on you guys, to be doing the work out there and to make sure that our voices are being heard, our people are being heard through petitions, and then of course through the direct lobbying efforts that we do. But we want to do some events later in the year where we're going to draw more attention to this. We're committed to this. We're not going to go away. We're only going to get louder. If there's more inaction, we get louder, right? That's exactly what we need to do. So Jorge, what are the prospects of the legislation? I love to hear what you just said about these other senators coming on board. What do you hear about Congress?
So look, we have this event here today, and the truth is it doesn't just stay here. Literally right now, we've got watch parties throughout the country. There are people in North Carolina watching and participating right now, in Florida, in Nevada. You can turn around and wave at those cameras and wave at your fellow activists who are all engaging right now, excited about the news and the conversation we're having. This needs to resound much further than here. And you guys know that, and you're helping us do that, right? There's no way that a senator from North Carolina decides to sign on if they're not hearing it from constituents. And something that Genevieve, our state director here, always reminds me of, yes, of course, we're going to talk about the border in Texas, right? It's the state with the longest border. It is essential to who Texas is, essential to its future prosperity. Of course, the leadership around border is going to come from here, but it is not an issue that only impacts Texas. It impacts the country. Everyone across the country wants to understand and know that we have a system that works and that we can enforce and that is respectable. And this type of bill helps reassure the American people that we are going to have a system that does just that, and we have the adequate investments to make sure that our border feels secure in that way. And so, it is a Texas-led effort, thanks to Senator Cornyn, and of course in Arizona as well, but it impacts the entire country.
Yes. So before we throw it to the audience for questions from you guys,
we want to talk about
dignity.
No. You're right. We did talk about agriculture. We talked about Dreamers, and we talked about border. And there's a reason why we did that. Those bills right now exist in the Senate and are all bipartisan. Congress can act on those bills. And what we want is for Congress to start negotiating on those. And so every time you are engaging with us and helping us elevate things like the Bipartisan Border Solution Act, it makes that bill, especially as we get more co-sponsors on it, it makes it a tangible piece of negotiation, right? Like really gives it more umps. It was from the beginning. Again, I mean, many of us were impressed when it was introduced by Cornyn and Sinema. But the more people get behind it, the more momentum we get going. And so we truly believe that these three components have Congress has the opportunity to pass them and make a difference with them. So that's why we selected the conversation the way we did to talk about these three things. And I know we're talking a lot about Bipartisan Border Solutions Act, and there's ways for you to get active today on that bill, but you'll see a lot more on those other two, because we truly see the opportunity to bring those three together, not just from our own opinions, but truly about the opinion that we hear from all of you. And then even across America, we have polling that shows that over 75% of Americans would support bringing these three pieces together. And that includes majorities of people who identify as conservative, independent, and liberal, right? That's across the board.
So as Genevieve, she's gonna be walking around with the mic. If you guys want to start raising your hands, as we queue up for the questions, I love that Jorge said respectable. And it reminds me of, in the 1920s, we passed a law. It was the Prohibition Act. It said that you couldn't manufacture, distribute, or consume liquor, alcohol, basically. For want of a beer, Americans were getting jailed. Were they bad people? No, it was a bad law, and we had to undo it. There was a certain element that I think took advantage of it and were bad people. But the vast majority of Americans, for want of a beer, were getting into criminal felony trouble. Today, for want of opportunity, we have a law that doesn't allow for that. Are they bad people? Of course, some of them are. But the vast majority of these folks are good, decent, industrious people who want to improve their lot in life. And we're talking about legal channels that would allow and welcome that flow of folks who just want to improve their own lives And while they're doing that, strengthen America. And it's on us to make that happen. So any questions from the audience?
As we wait for a question, so please raise your hands and we'll get the mic to you. But 2 quick points on that. One, I think we're both talking about alcohol. We're going to get a reputation for our types of, I swear to you, that's all by coincidence and was not planned. But 2, to Daniel's point, like to many folks, I think sometimes we forget to connect. They were like, well, if you're talking about border security, why are you talking about legal immigration? And we heard today from some agents at CBP that talked about how they're not anti-immigrant, they're pro-security. And you can be both pro-immigrant and pro-security. And a big part of their job is to try to anticipate or manage the flow that's coming. And so we talk about legal immigration because the good people that are being mixed with those that want to do harm to the US at the border, if we provided other alternatives, legal channels that they can access, you start to disarm the ones that want to do harm at the border because they can no longer manipulate the good people that are stuck coming through the border because now those people have a different alternative. They have a different option. Our system hasn't kept up with that and the only thing that many immigrants right now have is to plead asylum at the border, and that shouldn't be the case. We should have legal channels that they can access, and we can debate how many of those legal channels there should exist and how many of them should be temporary versus permanent. Those are debates that we welcome, but the truth is in my opinion, there is no way that the numbers that were set back in the 80s still apply to our economy and the needs of our country today.
Gentlemen, we have a question over here from Juan.
So I have a question. How does this bill will address the prices of immigration, focusing on USCIS, which it's a fee-funded organization? They don't get any support from the federal government. In my personal case, my family in the last 2 years, just to do the permanent residence process, we have paid about $50,000 between their fees and our lawyer fees, which not everyone in Latin America can realistically afford.
So a couple things there. So yes, I think cost is definitely a high barrier. Again, if we start talking about legal channels, if you have legal channels, but nobody has the resources to access them, you're actually not providing the types of positive incentives that we want people and creating the alternatives that we want. But I'll tell you this, I know I've got some of our policy experts in the audience, so correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure this bill directly addresses any sort of the fees that are passed by the agency, right? The agency determines those fees, but you added on top of that the price of lawyers and the need for lawyers. I'm excited to live in America because we are entrepreneurs. And even today, I was just talking with someone about how we can improve that part. How do we make it easier for immigrants to access the system without having to wait for the department or the agency in the government to change its fees, but actually being more entrepreneur on our end, right? At some point, TurboTax came into existence and created a way for folks to access and submit their taxes without having to always hire an accountant. There are companies out there right now, some by people in the audience, that are designing ways for folks to easily access the process and the paperwork without having to add on thousands of dollars of fees. Not to say, look, as a fellow, former lawyer, some of those lawyers are doing some very, very good work. But when those fees become burdensome and there's better ways or alternatives that can be provided, we should embrace those. And so I'm excited that we live in a country where there's the opportunity to be entrepreneur and address the problem you're talking about without us having to wait on the government to change it.
We have another question from the front.
Okay, you mentioned that you're gonna pass the bipartisan law that's gonna help. But if you don't go and change the immigration process, the laws that are in effect right now, all the effort that we're putting on, it's not gonna go. I'm an immigrant. I came into the legal channels, I passed everything, and I became a citizen. But the problem that we have is there's people that come in and the system didn't grow up with the people that come in. So it is outrageous the amount of people waiting in asylum cases. Miguel can correct me over there, but he said, it depends on your lawyer. Yeah, but if you don't have the money to pay a lawyer, you have to wait. So the system is vicious and damaged. We need to do something about it. Definitely. That's the question.
I couldn't agree more, right? And I'm actually glad that you raised this because I think I want to clarify something. We do not believe that these 3 bills alone are going to fix this problem, right? This is just the first step. This is the beginning. Because the problem has been that, again, for more than 30 years, Congress has decided not to do this. And sometimes it's because the problem seems so big to them that they can't do all of it, but everybody wants them to do all of it. What I love about Libre and AFP is if tomorrow Congress wants to do all of it, we'll be there with them. We are ready to work with any administration, any member of Congress to do as much as they want to. But right now, what we're understanding is that there's an appetite to do a first step that combines investing and more security at the border with solutions like Dreamers and possibly agricultural reform. But that's only the beginning, right? And we've seen this work in things like criminal justice reform or in other areas where you can take and show, particularly our elected members, that the country is ready for them to work together on something. Let's get that done, show them that it's possible, and then we can move to some of the other issues. But you're right, by no means do these 3 bills alone give us the immigration system that we need for the country today. It's going to take more work, and I'm happy to come alongside any of you to make sure that not only we get these first 3 bills passed, but then we do what needs to get done for those other pieces too.
Gentlemen, we have a lot of questions coming in from online. I'm going to toss it to Kevin to ask a few of those.
Kevin, so before you ask the question, can I just ask Eli Lara to stand up? He's the pastor of this church, and he's been so gracious to us and allowing us to be here. Eli, por favor. Thank you, Eli. Just saw him walk in. He used to be a former Libre employee too, by the way. But
all right. So a question from online is, in the absence of the federal government acting, we've talked about how it's been 30 years that we've seen immigration reform actually happen. Should states try carrying the load in the absence of the federal government? And if so, how?
You want me to go? I think that's a very tricky question, and I'll tell you why. There's certainly a role for states to play, and we've been on other issues, because we all know, right? AFP and Libre work on a number of issues. On some other issues, there's a lot more that states can do to show the way. The issue of immigration, however, as stated in our Constitution, is an issue for the federal government, right? And so while there may be things that states can do and are in their power to do, we will never get enough state action to get the actual fixes and solutions we need. That will require the federal government. And so we remain very focused on the federal government because, again, it's been more than 3 decades. It's been too long that Congress in Washington, D.C. ignores this issue. And sometimes, to be frank, they point and say, well, it's okay, that's not an Dreamers, there's not an issue with Dreamers. Look, every state is letting them have, access college, and other states are letting them have licenses. We don't have to deal with this. The truth is they still need to deal with it. And so I think there's a lot, and we've seen areas where states can do a lot to show what's possible here. But the truth is we need to focus a lot of that energy on the federal government and get our members in Congress to actually move on this issue. That's not to say that states can't join us with this, right? The power of the delegations from different states, governors from different states, chambers of commerce from different states, the grassroots from different states, all of those make a huge difference. But we are really focusing on the federal government because that's what this is their baby, right? The Constitution says, federal government, you own immigration. And so we need them to step up.
And to be fair, if there were state governor here, he'd tell you that, of course, they have to deal with the immediate impact of the flows of immigrants coming into their states, either on education, on healthcare, transportation, all these issues. So just because it lies in the responsibility of Congress to deal with this issue, the ones who are dealing with the impact are governors, and they are very much invested in this issue.
Gentlemen, we've got a lot of people on this side of the audience, so I'm going to be coming over to you guys next.
I think we've got time for about 2 more questions.
Okay, great.
Getting hearing from the back.
Yes, my name is William Diaz from Casa de Venezuela in Orlando. Actually, I send a wave to the people in Miami, people in Orlando that are watching this event tonight. And thank you to all the Libre staff. I think one of the big problems that we have is that the we have a Congress where the reps are in duties for 2 years, which I think is too short because they got elected on November. And I mean, then they work until summer the following year, and then after that, they had to restart campaigning again for re-election. So they do not stay clear to work for the people. And the same opposition, you see the senators with so long 6 years, and they say, well, I don't care because I got re-election in 6 years. And who is losing? The people. So I think that when you mentioned the Dreamers Act, I said 11, but it was 11 times that had been in and out because you introduced a bill in Congress, and after 2 years, you had to reapply again. So, I mean, like this bill that I want to say today that we will support the Senator Cronin and Cinema bill. We're going to give the support, but then what happened if after 2 years that do not pass? So it's gone. So, I mean, what do you think exactly that we can keep doing with the reps, with the senators, with the legislatures to improve this?
We hold them accountable, right? That is the ability that we have as grassroots organizations, that the capability, that the power that Libre and AFP and CVA and others have created is the ability to hold folks accountable. And you're right, it is not easy because they have so many different incentives and pressures. One of them is the timetable and the fundraising and the re-election cycle. But we have to be there to remind them, even if it's for those 6 weeks or 6 months that they're going to be there, just focus on policy. We have to be there holding them accountable. And we have to be there again, holding them accountable, because they will come back to you, William. They'll come back and say, William, vote for me, because next time I'll really do it. We have to be there the next day and say, you said, and I'm going to be here every day until you pass it. Right. And that's how we get things done. That's why AFP and Libre have the power, because of you all and the ability to hold our elected officials accountable. I just think that is the beauty of what these organizations do. They are on 365 days a year so that the elected officials feel that pressure to get things done. The situation you're talking about is very real. And right now, it's not just the time, it's the other issues that get it pushed in front of them. We just have to keep pushing on the issues that we feel are important so that make sure that it doesn't fall off of their agenda or their desk.
Yeah, and I would add that obviously we're a representative government. We're a republic, right? We elect people to go and represent us, and they're the ones who speak for us. And even though it's 2 years, they find a way to move legislation when they want to, when it's a priority. Look, they've passed immigration legislation in the Senate while Republicans had control under Frist, but they didn't pass it when Nancy Pelosi had control in the House. It died. And then they passed it in the House, but it didn't pass it in the Senate. It's worked both ways, right? Even though some are there 6 years, the others are there 2 years. Somehow they find a way when it's a priority, and that's why Jorge's right. We have to hold them accountable, and we're gonna step it up.
Well, let me.
ETS for Venezuela was approved in the House, but not at the Senate. And then finally, President Biden last year signed it, executive action. But that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a law.
What I would add to this, though, is to make sure that I clarify. When I say accountability, it's not just in a negative sense, in a let me scream outside of their office type of way, right? I think it also includes, which we do very well, is bringing support to those who do step out, right? Because they are going to get from the people who like the status quo are very loud, and we have to be there to support the leaders, again, like Senator Cornyn and Senator Sinema, and now the new co-sponsors who step out and say, hey, I want to talk about a real solution. Being there and saying, we have your back. We support you. Way to go. Come to this event. Come talk about it again. And give them the positive reinforcement, because they'll tell us they get a lot of backlash for doing the right thing. And so we have to be there to counter that. So when I say accountability, it's not just demanding things of people. It's really being there for our champions, understanding what they're going through, helping meet those members where they're at, right? And that's how you design the policies and the process and get things done.
Gentlemen, we have our last question from this side of the room. Sandy.
agree with the two gentlemen that say it's the system that needs to be fixed. I have an aunt that was Mexican that took years to come across and be a citizen. A daughter-in-law was born in Mexico, had to go through the process. A brother-in-law from Cuba, same thing. A son-in-law from Spain. I'm Anglo. I'm sorry I don't have the Hispanic background, but we do have the international family. It is not fair for all of these years and years of waiting and paying, and all of you are familiar. So my question is, what exactly does this Bipartisan Border Solution Act do to answer any of that part of it? I understand that you're talking about more Border Patrol personnel and all of this adding to, but we're not getting to the root. Does this go to the root of the problem, which is the system?
Only in part, just being honest, right? When the Bipartisan Border Solutions Act focuses heavily on the border, right? And the situation at the border, there is, again, there's some process improvements at the border to make sure that those that are seeking asylum or being apprehended at the border have a faster process, and we can meet the due process and fairness that is required for those who are going through there, and doing it in less time. Again, not the 4.5 years that we're currently looking at now, and sometimes even more. But to the point made earlier, there needs to be more, right? When we're talking about the overall system, it's not all in this one bill. This bill is one piece of that. And there's still negotiations and debates and conversations that have to happen about the broader system. You're absolutely right.
Big hand for Jorge Lima. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Let's get David back on here.
Thank you. So these guys are awesome, right? Definitely Jorge and Daniel know what they're talking about. We are going to go now to a moment in time that's very unique. We're going to have conversations at your tables, and you guys that are online right now and at watch parties, you're going to do the same thing. Before we do that, though, I want to thank a few people. First of all, Daniel took some thunder from me. Eli, I really want to thank you, brother. I remember years ago, you and I talked about a Bible group that you were starting, a Bible study, and now you have a 1,500 member church. And anyway, great work. And thank you for letting us be here. I also want to thank our staff and all the volunteers, sorry, I'm stepping out of the light, who are here from all over the country. But particularly, we had a fly-in where we flew in volunteers from all over the place. This was an idea that came from our Florida team. Annie Ocasio and Alian Collazo, and I want to thank them because they did a great job. So I want to talk to you what we're going to do right now. So you have a couple QR codes on your tables. One of them is for a question board. If you have more questions, go to that on your phone and you'll be able to ask some more questions. Then there's also another QR code. There's going to be 3 of them. There's another QR code that takes you to what I'm going to talk about at the end, which is a petition thanking the senators who are doing the Bipartisan Border Solutions Act. We really need you to get involved there. And then there's a third one, and I'm forgetting what the third one is, a small one on the table. The survey, I'm sorry. And I'll talk to you about the survey at the very end. But at this point, we have a Libre staffer at every table. We have also some help from our other department, GLA and Education and Training, who are here with us. They're sitting at your table. We want to have a conversation about immigration, about the border, you guys that were there and those of you who live it every single day. And we want to have a conversation about what these solutions that we're talking about. But we want to hear what you think solutions could be to every single day problems. All right. So anyway, we're going to close out about 30 minutes and then I'm going to come back and I'll close us out and we'll talk about some other actions you guys can help us out with. Okay. Thank you. All right, everyone. All right. Hey, I know this has been a great time of conversation, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed it. But we're gonna restart the end of the program real quick, and we're gonna close out. So if everybody could pay attention up here for just a minute. Hey, everybody. Great conversations. It's awesome. Love that you guys got together to talk. I hope that this format really helped you guys have a conversation about the different solutions that we're talking about, but also connecting. Hello, everyone. We're going to continue with the next part of our of the rest of Soluciones. So I love the fact that I had to say it like 4 times because it means that you guys are really, really deep in thought and conversation, which is awesome. So I'm going to give you guys just a few instructions. But I wanted to thank a couple more people that are here. Senator Cornyn's office. We have some folks here with us tonight, and I'm reading, so I'm sorry if I get your name wrong. But Ana Garcia and Clarissa Sanchez, thank you so much for being here. And thank you for the hard work on the Bipartisan Border Solutions Act. We really, really, really appreciate it. And then also a city commissioner, councilman, excuse me, Sebi Haddad. Thank you so much for being here as well. This is an easy part for me to do because I'm also a pastor. So I'm going to preach for the next hour and a half. No, I'm just kidding. So listen, guys. The reason we brought you guys together is because we want to make sure that you understand this, that there are solutions to these big problems that we're talking about. Soluciones con Libre specifically is geared towards bringing the community together to have conversations about the real problems that affect our community, not only the Hispanic community, but the nation at large, right? And these conversations help us get there. I hope that it was beneficial for you. But one of the things that we do at the Libre Initiative and at AFP and all of our partners is that we take action. We don't just sit around and talk about things. We take action. So I'm going to do my rah-rah speech real quick. If you're offended by rah-rah speeches, I'm sorry. But this is what we need. We need you all to be a part of the solution. And so right now, you can do that by reinforcing Senator Cornyn's office and Senator Cornyn and Senator Sinema, who have both co-sponsored a bill that we really think is a solution, one of the solutions to the bigger problem of immigration as a whole, right? But we start in a certain place. So what I want you guys to do, and those of you who are listening to me online, you have a QR code right in front of you. If you could scan that and send very quickly a petition going straight to the senators' offices saying, thank you, we support you. One of the things that Jorge talked about was the fact that when people who stand up and take a stance to do something good, when they hear that the community is with them, it emboldens them even further. And so we want you to do that. So if you could do that right now, that would be awesome. So everybody online do the same thing. So this QR code, you guys don't have one, you can take this one. Yeah, or share one right over there. It should be a printed paper. Yep. Should be a printed paper right there in front of you. Yep. So if you guys could take just 1 minute, you can make a really big difference. So if you guys do that right now, then we'll move on and we'll close out. Show of hands, everybody. Once you're done, if you could raise your hand, that'd be great. Give me an idea so we can keep going. All right, we'll wait another minute. So guys, listen, when I say that we really need your help and we really need you to be a part of what we're doing, I mean that in a local sense and in a national sense. The Libre Initiative is a national organization. When we have, I think, the greatest access to media with Daniel Garza going on Fox News, on CNN Español, all over the country with our staffers being in front of media, trying to be a leading voice in the Hispanic community for the issues that really mean and matter to us, right? We really need you to elevate those voices. If we want to see change, we the people have to be a part of that. And so Libre is asking you, we ask you to take part and to be a part of that cause with us. So we don't just talk about issues, like I said, we take action. So we need all of you to be with us and to take action right alongside with us. But there is another thing that I'd like for you guys to do. And so we want to capture very clearly how you guys felt before this event and now how you feel after it, right? So very simply, another QR code. These are really cool, by the way. This little small QR code that's on your table is a survey. And it's a very simple survey, just 3 questions. But I want you guys to, as honestly as you can, answer these questions. So number 1, sorry. Yeah, there you go. You need it back. All right. So the first question is very simple. Immigration has played a part in America's success. Yes or no? So before you came here, what did you think about that? That's the first question, right? And then very simply, answer how you feel now after you've gone through this event and had these conversations and have been to the border and seen what's going on there. How do you feel about if immigration has played a part in American success? And I think that is a 1 through 10 question. How strongly do you feel about it? Second question, reforming our immigration system should include border security. How did you feel about that before you came into the room? One through 10. And then how do you feel now after that we've had these conversations? Do you feel differently about that? Last question. Providing a permanent solution to dreamers is an urgent issue. How did you feel before the conversation? And then how do you feel about that now? The reason why we want to capture these questions and these answers is because we want to know if we're being effective in the way that we're communicating the solutions that we're talking about. It doesn't help if I get up here and I speak to you for an hour and you all don't think that what I'm saying makes any sense, right? So these surveys help us to get better at what we do. This is how you also help us to help other people. So you heard me talk about all of these other places. Right now online, we have folks in Orlando, in Miami, in Tampa, in Las Vegas, in Denver, in Virginia. We have people in North Carolina, in Georgia, here in Texas that are joining us online, in El Paso, in Laredo, in Houston. All these folks are part of what we're doing together. But what I want to highlight tonight is a young man. His name is Johnny Vasquez. Johnny is right over here. Johnny has been working like a crazy man to put this event together with a few other people, but Johnny is going to be back at the table at the end of this. And I think you guys got some tickets, right? They got some tickets for the taco truck that's outside, so please hang around, right? But Johnny is going to be at the table outside. If you guys live here in Texas, in the RGV, this is your connection to the Libre initiative. Johnny's a great guy. He's been a great part of your community for a long time. And we really want to focus in on just thanking Johnny for what he's done, but also a better way that you could thank Johnny for what he's done is by taking part of the great work that he's doing in the community.
Thank you, David. I was told, give it up, give it up, give it up. I was told I wasn't going to get any FaceTime and I was going to be on stage, but I appreciate it, Kennedy. Well, thank you all so much for making it out. I recognize a lot of faces. I love all y'all. And I want to thank you for making time. I know talking about immigration on a Wednesday night, whoo, man, I'm so proud of y'all. So thank you all for coming out. We do have some food for you all. Y'all are probably hungry. So I know I am. And we've been running around all day. But we got some food for you all outside. Grab a ticket on your way out, okay? And grab my business card too. It's got my number. If you don't have my number, get my number, or I'm going to get yours one way or another. So anyway, okay, so I want to thank first and foremost my wife. Where is she? Well, y'all tell her that I thanked her on stage, okay? Okay? Don't. She better come out here. She supports me so much. So I want to bring her on stage. I want out on stage. There you go. There she is right there. Everybody. And I want to thank my volunteers. I have 2 young ladies in the back that are out of a homeschool group that we're a part of, that were so, give it up. And then also Ronaldo right here, my parking attendant, making sure none of y'all got towed. We can't do it without volunteers. We can't do it without you folks. We thank you very much for making it out tonight. So, I got to thank Eli Lara. Yes. Yes. Last thing. or I will not be doing my due diligence. Please, please, please answer my phone call. No, I'm just kidding. I love you all. I'm going to be giving you a call. I'm serious. I'm going to follow up. I'm going to check in on you. I want y'all to know that this community, I was born here. I've lived here. I've been here 40 years. I think, yeah, 40 for right now. And I'm enjoying it. But is it going to be the same for my children and their children and their children's children? It starts today and it starts right now. So I will be giving you all a call. I love you all. You have a good night. And I'm going to close it out. Eli Lara, thank you again for allowing us to borrow your church. Beautiful facility. I think he left. He's had a long day. But that is the end of this evening. And again, tacos, grab a ticket, and we will see you all here in a bit.